Many people may have heard that Wesley Snipes owed the US government about $15 million. In 2010, he got 3 years and went to prison. That was the final blow to his career, which had already failed. Today we would like to recall his career and focus on the most interesting moments. Wesley Snipes appeared in movies in the mid-80s. Initially, the actor made his way into Hollywood films in the second or third plan, where quite difficult to see him. Only in 1989, Wesley lit up in the movie Major League and The King of New York, where he got a noticeable role. A breakthrough for Snipes was the main role in a small movie Jungle Fever directed by Spike Lee. The film received several nominations at the Cannes Film Festival, and although Wesley is not mentioned anywhere, his potential was appreciated, as well as many other actors. The film's star Samuel Jackson also generally got his first significant role in this film and just got him nominated at Cannes. Jackson really said that for nothing, because he was not playing a drug addict, because he was drug addict at that moment. Film was not very successful at the box office, but bring money back. After working on the Spike Lee film, Snipes' career boomed, and he signed on for several films at once. One of them was the comedy White Men Can't Jump. Although the film's title is a common joke about white basketball players, the filmmakers say that the shooting was a lot more fun, precisely because Woody Harrelson played basketball much better than Snipes. Charlie Sheen, whose career in those years had already progressed, could have played in the film, but he refused, saying that he did not see himself as a basketball player. It was in his place that Woody Harrelson was hired. And while Charlie failed with his films, White Men Can't Jump became a big hit at box office. The film takes $74 million with a budget of only $8 million. Also in 1992, the action movie Passenger 57 hit the big screens. Here again Snipes had a little luck. For a long time, it was assumed that the main role in the film will play Sylvester Stallone, but in the end Sly gave up Passengers in favor of the cliffhanger. The producers were very upset by this fact, for they immediately had a huge budget cut. For a laugh, they even gave Tom Sizemore's character name Sly. After giving up the lead role of Stallone, the producers tried to get Eddie Murphy in his place, but he demanded an even more money for his participation than Stallone was supposed to get. Frightened by Murphy's requests, the studio turned to Denzel, but he refused. Only then did the role go to Snipes. Some big hit Passenger was not, but it repaid its costs and brought in a small profit, which on video increased greatly. Nearby Wesley was also hit by 2 flops. The Water Dance and Boiling Point failed, but since their total budget was less than Passenger alone, they didn't have any impact on Snipes' career. And producers continued to pull Wesley in different directions. In 1993, the actor again starred in 2 box office hits. They were Demolition Man, where Wesley ran with Sly, and Rising Sun, in which Snipes paired Sean Connery. Demolition Man is an iconic film for the early 90s, and by good tradition, it was supposed to be very different. When the project first started in development, the producers wanted to see other actors in the lead roles than the ones who ended up there. The producer's first choice for the lead role was the rapidly gaining popularity Muscles from Brussels. In the role of the frozen outlaw, the studio wanted to see Steven Seagal, whose career was also on the rise. Steven turned down the role of the bad guy, but was willing to play a cop. Then the producers tried to persuade Van Damme to play the charismatic villain, but he did not agree even for an increased fee. After which Steven left and the project stalled. Jean-Claude, who had no shortage of offers, left for Hard Target. At this point, Sly joined the project, taking Snipes with him. It was opposed by the studio, but in those years, Sylvester could ignore the indignation of the peasants and he pushed Wesley in film. It really wasn't that someone didn't like Snipes. Studio bosses were afraid that an Afro-American who played a mass murderer will cause unwanted outrage. Since Snipes himself really wanted to appear in the film, the studio gave up. For his role in this film, Wesley received $4 million. The actor even received MTV Movie Awards nomination for his role as Simon Phoenix at the Best Villain category. Demolition Man did well at the box office, collecting $159 million on a budget of $57 million. But the studio was expecting more, supposed to get a sequel and a prequel, in which authors were going to use Simon Phoenix again. However, after the modest results, all the developments were pushed to the far shelf. These days, by the way, sometimes shows rumors about desire to restart The Demolition Man or even shoot a direct sequel to it, but beyond the talks, things do not go. Rising Sun also seems to be no failure. With a budget of $40 million at the box office, the film took $107 million, but in general there is also an obvious understatement. However, the role in these two films have had a positive impact on Snipes' career. For his next film Drop Zone, he has already earned $7 million. It was a pretty expensive movie with a $45 million budget. In comparison, Speed with Keanu Reeves only cost $30. Here, too, the main role was able to play Steven Seagal, but he requested $12 million. When producers asked to reduce his appetite, Steven went to work on the Under Siege sequel, where he was not limited and was offered $15 million. And Snipes came in to fill the vacated spot. Although the audience ratings of the film are very low, it is believed that film Terminal Velocity with Charlie Sheen dealt main blow to the actor career, which hit the box office a couple of months earlier. Originally the Drop Zone was to be released first, but because of poor test screenings, Paramount Studio sent the picture to reshoot and its release was delayed from August to December. In the end, Terminal Velocity fell under the branded Belgian kick and failed miserably. The viewer went to Timecop. Snipes ended up in the holiday December slot, where he found himself no one wanted. In 1995, Snipes was hit with another failure. Money Train was derailed. It was a very important film for Sony Studios and she spared no money on it. It ended up costing $68 million. The Heat that came out next door cost $60 million and Bad Guys only $19. The massive GoldenEye that broke the bank next door cost $80. Bloated the budget to some inadequate decision figures in preparation for the shoot. They built one of the most complicated, long and expensive sets in Hollywood history for Money Train. Originally the movie wanted to shoot in a real subway, but in preparation for filming the creators encountered a lot of difficulties. After that, it was decided to build several subway tunnels at the studio in Los Angeles. 12 subway wagons were transported from New York. The train were converted to run on propane, for the insurance companies refused to work if the rails were electrified. Plus many people heavily criticized director Joseph Rubin. Tony Scott, who directed The Last Boy Scout, Enemy of the State, and Top Gun was originally set to direct the picture, but due to creative differences Scott left the project. And his place took Rubin, who immediately ordered to rewrite almost the entire script. Because of this, the film lost a lot of momentum. The studio was still able to return the expenses for the decorations. The constructions for this film later use in many films, such as Mutants and Stigmata. There is one more thing that this film is known for. The sex scene between characters of Wesley Snipes and Jennifer Lopez script did not include. It was decided to shoot a scene at the end of filming. Later, in an interview Lopez said that in one of the movies in which she appeared, the director asked her to be naked in the dressing room. According to him, it was necessary to see her body. Lopez refused, but did not give the director's name. It is generally accepted that it was Rubin. Money Train was also very unlucky at the box office. It fell to James Bond Rising from the Ashes, and a sequel to The Adventures of Ace Ventura. Plus, Martin Scorsese's Casino and Toy Story started the same day, and a week later, Wesley was hit by Jumanji and The Heat. There was simply no room left in the top 10. Train collected just over $70 million at the worldwide box office on a budget of $68 million, making it one of the biggest flops of the year at the time of release. Snipes caught a wave of failures. It's even surprising that he hadn't already faded away in the mid-90s. Right after Money Train went down, so did The Fan. It was a Hollywood longshot that a lot of people wanted to star in, but something kept going wrong. Director Tony Scott twice turned down an offer to direct the film. He explained his denial as very simple. He did not like the script, absolutely not interested in baseball. He agreed to direct the picture only after the appearance of Robert De Niro. Scott had long wanted to work with the talented actor. This moment is often recalled later in the American press. Baseball player Joe Crooks was a consultant on the film. At the end of filming, criticized Snipes and Scott. According to Crooks, Snipes hadn't learned how to swing a bat reliably, and Tony Scott was incredibly distant from baseball and therefore wasn't interested in a realistic portrayal of everything related to the game. Plus, while filming Fan, Tony Scott signed on to direct the movie Enemy of the State. By the director's own admission, this circumstance unknowingly turned Fan into a guinea pig because he went to experiment with different visual styles he wanted to use in a future film. Initially, Wesley Snipes wanted to be in Robert De Niro role, but the studio convinced him that as a baseball star he would be more organic. Even Dr. Moreau Island gave up on the film at the box office, and the final crush was Kevin Costner Tin Cup, which was already losing its superstar status. Fan, on a budget of $55 million, collected less than $20. During those years, Snipes and Van Damme could have had a movie together called Sandstorm, but the still-believing Belgian again refused to play the villain and eventually the project fell apart. Instead of Sandstorm, Wesley decided to pick up a police thriller that fell out of Bruce Willis's hands. That film was Murder at 1600. Because after Willis left, the film was preparing to play in a box, the studio was afraid that the money spent on preparations for the shooting just go out the window, agreed to pay Snipes a record fee of $10 million for that. You could say that the film was not very lucky with the timing of release. If everything went smoothly and if Willis starred in it, the picture would have hit theaters in 1996. But for all the delays, it didn't arrive on the big screens until the 97th. At a time when the market was already full of various political thrillers associated with the White House and they were sinking at the box office in droves. Somewhere nearby died even Clint Eastwood Absolute Power. At the worldwide box office, the $40 million film took only $41 million. For Snipes, 98 also began sadly. Failed movie, Marshalls. Critics simply destroyed the film, and Robert Downey Jr. played a role in the film, said the movie is one of the worst in the history of Hollywood. Perhaps this year would have been for Wesley the beginning of the end, but Blade hit theaters, which at some time was a salvation for the actor. Snipes really wanted to play Black Panther. A superhero movie tried to launch in the late 90s. At the same time, he was offered the role of Blade. Deciding that Panther was only in development, he decided to be a good vampire. Wesley worried about his future and tried to get into all the nuances associated with the film. According to Stephen Dorff, initially they did not find common ground. Dorff himself is a big fan of improvisation and reacted very rudely to advice from the outside. Snipes being a producer of the film, he felt obliged to advise and direct the actors in the right direction for the movie. Because of this, at the start of filming between them, there were several clashes, almost turned into a fight. Over time, actors used to each other, and eventually they spoke very warmly about working together. By the way, in an interview, screenwriter David Goyer said that the David Fincher helped him write the script, who after the movie Seven, wanted to try his hand in a different genre, but for reasons unknown to Goyer, Fincher stopped cooperating and took on other projects. So, in theory, the movie could have been completely different. Specifically, no one believed in this Blade. The film was predicted to be a box office failure because it was the next comic book movie in theaters after Batman and Robin. Analysts believed that the audience would ignore a film about an unknown hero, coming out right after such a terrible movie. However, it was Blade that manages to knock Saving Private Ryan off the top of the box office. With a budget of $45 million, Blade took in $131 million at the box office. This result is not a huge success, but the film felt great on home video. and the studio immediately announced a sequel. It was during this period of his career that Snipes stopped paying taxes, which would eventually lead to him going to jail. Although The Blade saved the actor's career, Snipes continued to star in all kinds of movies. He signed up for films in which he was paid more money. Among them are the work of the infamous studio Franchise Pictures, which for the ability to steal the movie budget, in the early '90s dragged through the courts, after which she hastily went bankrupt. Interestingly, this studio's The Art of War would probably have been the last Wesley film that had any chance at the box office, with the exception of the Blade series. But just because of various scandals and a crazy budget not seen on screen, the film lost its American distributor in the form of Fox Studio and went to Warner, which didn't really advertise it in theaters. There, the film, like The Matrix, which had a $60 million budget, collect only $30 million. As all of Snipes' non-vampire films failed, by the mid-90s the actor had already rolled into projects that went straight to video. And when the third Blade flopped in 2004, Snipes' stellar career was over. After a role in the failed Chaos in 2005, which still hit theaters, Snipes began playing in movies that did not even fit into the B-movie category. Wesley went to prison in late 2010. He was acquitted on some charges, but as a result of tax evasion, the actor got 3 years. He was facing a much harsher sentence and the guys who ran Snipes' money got 10 years each. When you have a lot of money, there are some extenuating circumstances, which the court took into account. Of the 3 years, Snipes served 2. In very early 2013, Wesley was released from prison and Sly called him into The Expendables 3, where Snipes got one of the lead roles. This role did not positively impact the actor's career and a comeback as such did not happen. After Expendables, Snipes returned to action films of obscure category, whose scores rarely reach 4 out of 10. In recent years, he has often been helped by Eddie Murphy, inviting him into his films for small roles. One of these was a role in Coming to America. Most likely, when the actor's career went downhill in the early '90s, the actor could have saved himself by lowering his royalties and trying to get into better films, but Wesley chose a different path. Like many before him, the actor went bankrupt and lost almost all of his assets. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe and stay tuned for more releases.